Daniel's prophecy lays out a timeline for the Antichrist's rise. What if the Bible doesn't just warn us about this figure, but also precisely pinpoints the moment he arrives? Many believers don't realize that Gabriel didn't just give Daniel a single prophecy. He revealed 10 distinct secrets that, when taken together, form the ultimate end times clock, counting down to the Antichrist's arrival with mathematical accuracy. Let's start with the first secret, the 70 weeks framework. Gabriel's initial revelation is this framework, which structures all of human history. Daniel 9 verse 24 gives us the complete timeline. 70 weeks are decreed for your people and your holy city to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. Here's the key point that many overlook. These aren't literal weeks of 7 days. They're prophetic weeks, each representing 7 years. The Hebrew word shavim can refer to either 7 days or 7 years, but the context makes it clear that we're talking about years here. So 70 weeks equals a total of 490 years. But this isn't just any random 490-year period. It's the precise time frame from the decree to rebuild Jerusalem until the completion of God's plan for Israel and the establishment of his kingdom. This framework encompasses everything: finishing transgression, ending sin, bringing righteousness, sealing prophecy, and anointing the most holy place. In essence, human history is operating on a 490-year prophetic schedule. The second secret is the starting point. Gabriel's second revelation pinpoints the exact moment the countdown begins. Daniel 9 verse 25 provides the trigger. Know and understand this. From the time the word goes out to restore and rebuild Jerusalem until the Anointed One, the ruler, comes, there will be 7 sevens and 62 sevens. The countdown starts with the decree to restore and rebuild Jerusalem. However, there were several decrees concerning Jerusalem. Which one starts the prophetic clock? Here's a truly remarkable historical fact. Nehemiah 2 verses 1 to 8 records the decree that perfectly matches Gabriel's description. In the 20th year of King Artaxerxes, for 45 BC, Nehemiah received permission not just to return to Jerusalem, but specifically to restore and rebuild the city. This wasn't just about the temple. It was about rebuilding Jerusalem as a fully functioning city with walls, gates, and governmental authority. This decree in 445 BC marks the beginning of Gabriel's prophetic countdown. The third and fourth secrets involve dividing the 70 weeks into specific periods. Gabriel's third secret is how the 70 weeks are divided. Daniel 9 verse 25 breaks down the timeline into 7 sevens and 62 sevens. That's 7 weeks plus 62 weeks, totaling 69 weeks before the Messiah appears. 69 weeks equals 483 years. Starting from 445 BC, this brings us to approximately 32 AD, the exact time of Jesus' ministry and crucifixion. The mathematical precision is undeniable. Gabriel's fourth secret reveals what happens at the end of the 69 weeks. Daniel 9 verse 26 says, after the 62 sevens, the Anointed One will be put to death and will have nothing. This perfectly describes Jesus' crucifixion when he was rejected by his people and executed as a criminal. But note the timing. This happens after the 69 weeks, not during the 70th week. There's a gap between the 69th and 70th weeks that has now lasted over 2,000 years. The fifth secret is the Great Parenthesis. Gabriel's fifth secret concerns this gap between the 69th and 70th weeks, representing the entire church age. The 70th week wouldn't begin immediately. It would be delayed for an unspecified period while other events unfold. This parenthesis explains why nearly 2,000 years have passed since Jesus' crucifixion without the final week beginning. The prophetic clock stopped after 69 weeks and won't restart until the conditions for the 70th week are met. The sixth secret identifies the coming ruler. Gabriel's sixth secret identifies the person who will restart the prophetic clock. Daniel 9 verses 26 to 27 describes the ruler who will come and says he will confirm a covenant with many. This ruler comes from the people who destroyed Jerusalem, the Romans. Therefore, the Antichrist will emerge from a revived Roman Empire, which many scholars associate with modern Europe or a broader Western alliance. But here's a critical detail. This ruler doesn't create a new covenant. He confirms an existing one. This suggests there will already be some kind of agreement in place that he strengthens, expands, or guarantees. The moment this covenant confirmation happens, the 70th week begins, and the final 7-year countdown to Christ's return starts ticking. The 7th and 8th secrets focus on the midpoint crisis. Gabriel's 7th secret is the midpoint crisis. Daniel 9 verse 27 continues, "In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering." Exactly 3.5 years into the covenant, the Antichrist will break it by stopping Jewish worship. This is the abomination of desolation that Jesus referenced in Matthew 24 verse 15. The Antichrist will enter the rebuilt temple and declare himself God, triggering the Great Tribulation. Gabriel's 8th secret outlines the complete timeline of the final week. The 7 years are divided into 2 equal halves. The first 3.5 years will be relatively peaceful under the Antichrist covenant, but the second 3.5 years will be the worst period of persecution in human history. Revelation 11:3, 12:6, and 13:5 all reference this 3.5-year period using different measurements: 1,260 days, 42 months, or time, times, and half a time. This consistency proves this is a literal time frame, not just symbolic. The 9th secret concerns the duration of the desolation. Gabriel's 9th secret concerns how long the desolation will last. Daniel 9 verse 27 concludes, "And at the temple he will set up an abomination that causes desolation, until the end that is decreed is poured out on him." The desolation continues until the end that is decreed, meaning it has a predetermined finish date. The Antichrist's reign isn't open-ended. It's limited to exactly 3.5 years from the moment he commits the abomination. But here's what makes this hopeful. The phrase "poured out on him" indicates that the Antichrist himself will be destroyed when the decreed time ends. His victory is temporary. His defeat is certain and scheduled. Daniel 7 verse 26 confirms this, "But the court will sit, and his power will be taken away and completely destroyed forever." The 10th and final secret reveals the ultimate purpose. Gabriel's 10th and final secret is the ultimate purpose of the 70 weeks. Daniel 9 verse 24 lists 6 specific goals that will be accomplished by the end of the 490 years: to finish transgression, to put an end to sin, to atone for wickedness, to bring in everlasting righteousness, to seal up vision and prophecy, and to anoint the most holy place. These goals weren't fully accomplished at Jesus' first coming. They require his second coming and the establishment of his millennial kingdom. The 70th week is designed to complete what the first 69 weeks began. Here's the incredible scope. The 70 weeks prophecy covers the entire plan of redemption, from the rebuilding of Jerusalem to the establishment of God's eternal kingdom. Now, let's consider 3 ways this timeline predicted Jesus' first coming and sets the stage for the Antichrist's last stand. First, there's the mathematical precision of the 69 weeks. From the decree to rebuild Jerusalem in 445 BC to the appearance of the Messiah should be exactly 483 years. Using the prophetic year of 360 days, based on Revelation's use of 30-day months, 483 prophetic years equals 476 solar years. For 45 BC plus 476 years brings us to 32 AD, precisely when Jesus was crucified. Some calculations place it at 33 AD, but the margin of error is less than a year across nearly 5 centuries. Here's what makes this so astonishing. Daniel received this prophecy around 538 BC, meaning he predicted the exact timing of Jesus' appearance over 500 years in advance. This level of precision is impossible without divine revelation. Second, the timeline predicted Jesus through the specific events Gabriel described. Daniel 9 verse 26 says, "The anointed one will be put to death and will have nothing." This perfectly describes Jesus' crucifixion. He was executed as a criminal, rejected by his people, and died with no earthly possessions or political power. At the moment of death, it appeared he had accomplished nothing. However, the phrase "will have nothing" can also be translated, but not for himself. This suggests the Messiah's death would be sacrificial for others, not for his own sins. Isaiah 53 verse 8 confirms this interpretation. "He was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgression of my people, he was punished." Third, it sets up the final sequence. Jesus' first coming sets up the Antichrist's last stand. The gap between the 69th and 70th weeks represents the church age when the gospel goes to all nations. Matthew 24 verse 14 describes this period, "And this gospel of the kingdom will be preached in the whole world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come." But here's the prophetic sequence. Jesus' rejection by Israel at his first coming makes possible the Antichrist's acceptance by Israel at his appearance. John 5 verse 43 records Jesus' prophecy. I have come in my Father's name, and you do not accept me, but if someone else comes in his own name, you will accept him. The same nation that rejected their true Messiah will initially embrace the false Messiah until he reveals his true nature at the midpoint of the 70th week. But what exactly is the covenant that will start the final countdown? Daniel 9 verse 27 says the Antichrist will confirm a covenant with many for 1/7. The Hebrew word for many is rabbi, which often refers to the Jewish people specifically. This suggests the covenant will primarily involve Israel, though it may include other nations. Here's what most prophecy scholars believe. This will be a peace treaty that guarantees Israel's security and allows them to rebuild the temple and restart sacrifices. The Antichrist will position himself as Israel's protector and benefactor. But current events suggest this covenant may be closer than we think. The Abraham Accords have already normalized relations between Israel and several Arab nations. A future leader could easily expand and guarantee these agreements, creating the prophetic covenant. Several signs suggest the prophetic clock is ready to restart. First, Israel exists as a nation again after nearly 2,000 years of dispersion. This was a prerequisite for the 70th week, since it specifically concerns Daniel's people and holy city. Second, there's growing momentum for rebuilding the temple. The Temple Institute has prepared vessels, trained priests, and developed architectural plans. Red heifers have been bred specifically for the purification ceremony. Third, technology now exists for the global economic system described in Revelation 13. Digital currencies, biometric identification, and global surveillance networks make the mark of the beast technologically feasible. Fourth, the political framework for a revived Roman Empire exists through NATO, the EU, and other Western alliances that could provide the power base for the coming ruler. What makes Daniel's prophecy so compelling is its mathematical certainty. Gabriel didn't give vague spiritual insights. He provided specific numbers, timeframes, and measurable events. The 70 weeks aren't symbolic. They're literal periods of 7 years each. The countdown from 445 BC to Jesus' crucifixion proves the mathematical accuracy. The division into 7 plus 62 plus 1 weeks shows the precise structure. Here's what this means. When the final covenant is confirmed, we'll know exactly how much time remains. 7 years to the midpoint abomination and 3.5 more years to Christ's return. No guesswork, no speculation, just a mathematical countdown to the end. The precision of Daniel's 70 weeks prophecy proves its divine origin. No human could predict events 500 plus years in advance with mathematical accuracy. The fulfillment of the first 69 weeks guarantees the accuracy of the 70th. But this precision also reveals God's character. He doesn't operate randomly or chaotically. He works according to predetermined plans and schedules. The same God who timed Jesus' first coming to the exact year has timed the Antichrist's arrival and Christ's return with equal precision. Here's comfort for believers. If God's timing is this precise, his protection and provision are equally reliable. The same divine planning that schedules judgment also schedules deliverance. What if the Bible doesn't just warn about the Antichrist, but also times his arrival to the exact moment? Daniel 9 proves it does both. Gabriel's 10 secrets reveal the ultimate end times clock that's been counting down for over 2,500 years. The mathematical precision that predicted Jesus' first coming to the exact year also predicts the Antichrist's final stand with equal accuracy. When he confirms the covenant with many, the 7-year countdown begins and nothing can stop it. Has the covenant already been signed? Are we seconds away from the final clock ticking down? Current events suggest the stage is set, the players are positioned, and the conditions are aligned. The 70 weeks prophecy isn't just ancient history, it's current events waiting to unfold. The same divine precision that brought Jesus at the appointed time will bring the Antichrist at his appointed moment and Christ's return at the predetermined end. But here's the most important question. Are you ready for what happens when the final week begins? When the most terrifying sign appears, the abomination of desolation, Jesus doesn't say fight, protest, or pray. He says run. Not tomorrow, not after packing. Immediately. Flee to the mountains. Leave your coat. Don't return to the house. This isn't fear, it's obedience. In a culture that celebrates standing your ground, Jesus commands escape. Why? Because this single event marks a spiritual emergency like no other. The time for reflection will be over. The time for prayer past. When you see it, everything changes. If you're not ready to move, you may not survive. The ultimate warrior strategy is evacuation, not confrontation, and it's urgent. What most believers don't understand is that Jesus' flee command isn't cowardice, it's tactical wisdom from the ultimate military strategist. Hidden within his urgent warnings are 7 critical reasons why running is the only correct response to this specific crisis. But even deeper are 4 shocking reasons why Jesus directly links fleeing to successful escape and survival. This isn't just advice, it's a divine emergency protocol that could mean the difference between life and death for every believer alive when the abomination appears. The flee command is tied to one specific moment in history. Matthew 24 verses 15 to 16 records Jesus' exact words. So when you see standing in the holy place, the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand. Then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. This isn't about general persecution or gradual spiritual decline. It's about one shocking moment when the Antichrist enters the rebuilt temple in Jerusalem and declares himself to be God. This single act triggers the most intense persecution in human history. But here's what will blow your mind. Jesus treats this moment like a fire alarm. When you hear a fire alarm, you don't debate whether there's really a fire. You don't stop to pack belongings. You don't call friends to discuss options. You evacuate immediately because delay equals death. The abomination of desolation is God's fire alarm for the end times. When it sounds, intelligent people run without hesitation. The historical pattern of divine flight commands is clear. Jesus' command to flee follows a biblical pattern that spans thousands of years. Throughout Scripture, God has repeatedly told his people to run from judgment rather than resist it. Genesis 19 verse 17 records the angel's command to Lot, flee for your lives. Don't look back and don't stop anywhere in the plain. Flee to the mountains or you will be swept away. Lot ran from Sodom and survived. His wife looked back and died. 1 Kings 19 verse 3 describes Elijah's response to Jezebel's threats. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. This wasn't cowardice. Here's the incredible pattern. Every time God tells people to flee, those who obey immediately survive. Those who hesitate or look back perish. The flee command has a perfect success rate throughout biblical history. Now, here are 7 urgent reasons why believers must run, not resist, when the abomination appears. The first reason is that divine wrath, not just human persecution, is about to be poured out on the earth. Daniel 12 verse 1 describes what follows the abomination. There will be a time of distress, such as has not happened from the beginning of nations until then. This isn't just political upheaval, it's God's judgment on a world that has rejected his Son. Revelation 16 describes the 7 bowls of God's wrath that will be poured out after the abomination appears. Rivers turn to blood. The sun scorches people with fire. Massive earthquakes level cities. This isn't human persecution you can resist. It's divine judgment you must escape. When God decides to judge the earth, the only safe response is to be where he tells you to be. Fighting divine wrath is like trying to punch a hurricane, impossible and deadly. The second reason believers must flee is that supernatural evil will be unleashed at levels never before experienced. 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 9 describes the Antichrist's power. The coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie. This isn't just political oppression, it's demonic manifestation on a global scale. Revelation 9 verses 1 to 3 describes demons being released from the bottomless pit. The 5th angel sounded his trumpet, and I saw a star that had fallen from the sky to the earth. The star was given the key to the shaft of the abyss. When he opened the abyss, smoke rose from it like the smoke from a gigantic furnace. Here's what most people don't understand. You cannot fight supernatural evil with natural weapons. Physical resistance is useless against spiritual enemies. The only defense against unleashed demons is to be in the place God has prepared for protection. The third and 4th urgent reasons are connected. The third urgent reason to flee is that the persecution will be immediate and total. Revelation 13 verse 7 describes the scope. It was given power to wage war against God's holy people and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and nation. This isn't gradual persecution you can adapt to. It's instant, worldwide warfare against Christians. There will be no time to organize resistance, build alliances, or develop strategies. The persecution will be so swift and complete that only those who flee immediately will escape. The fourth urgent reason is that technology will make hiding impossible except in God's prepared places. Modern surveillance, satellite tracking, facial recognition, and digital monitoring mean there are no human hiding places left on Earth. But here's the incredible truth. The mountains and wilderness areas where Jesus tells people to flee are the few places on Earth where modern technology becomes useless. GPS fails in deep canyons. Satellites can't penetrate cave systems. Facial recognition requires cameras that don't exist in true wilderness. God's escape plan takes advantage of technology's limitations. The fifth urgent reason is about the mark enforcement. The fifth urgent reason to flee is that the mark of the beast will be enforced immediately after the abomination appears. Revelation 13 verses 16 to 17 describes the system. It also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands or on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had the mark. Once the abomination appears, believers will have perhaps days or weeks before the mark becomes mandatory. Those who stay in populated areas will face an impossible choice: take the mark or starve to death. But those who flee to the mountains will escape this choice entirely. In God's prepared wilderness places, the mark system becomes irrelevant because there's nothing to buy or sell. Divine provision replaces economic systems. Here's the strategic genius. By fleeing before the mark is enforced, believers avoid the ultimate spiritual trap that will damn billions of souls. The sixth urgent reason to flee is that family relationships will become deadly traps. Matthew 10 verse 21 warns, "Brother will betray brother to death, and a father his child. Children will rebel against their parents and have them put to death." After the abomination appears, family members who take the mark will hunt down family members who refuse it. The people you trust most will become your greatest threats. Staying close to family could cost you your life. The seventh and final urgent reason is that the persecution will specifically target those who resist. Revelation 20 verse 4 describes those who had been beheaded because of their testimony about Jesus and because of the word of God. They had not worshipped the beast or its image and had not received its mark. Resistance leads to martyrdom. Flight leads to protection. The choice couldn't be clearer. Here's what makes this so important. God isn't calling believers to be martyrs during this specific period. He's calling them to be survivors who will populate his millennial kingdom. Now, here are 4 reasons why Jesus directly connects fleeing to successful escape and survival. The first reason is that God has prepared specific places of supernatural protection in the wilderness. Revelation 12 verse 6 describes God's plan. The woman fled into the wilderness to a place prepared for her by God, where she might be taken care of for 1,260 days. The word prepared indicates these aren't random hiding spots. They're divinely appointed refuges equipped with everything needed for survival. Isaiah 33 verse 16 describes these places. This is the one who will dwell on the heights, whose refuge will be the mountain fortress. Their bread will be supplied, and water will not fail them. God has prepared wilderness locations with supernatural provision that makes survival not just possible, but guaranteed. But here's the key. These prepared places are only accessible to those who flee immediately when the sign appears. Hesitation means missing the divine evacuation window. The second reason Jesus links flight to escape is that God will provide supernatural transportation to his prepared places. Revelation 12 verse 14 describes how the woman was given the 2 wings of a great eagle so that she might fly to the place prepared for her in the wilderness. These aren't literal wings. They represent divine assistance that enables believers to reach safety with supernatural speed. Just like God parted the Red Sea for Israel's escape, he will provide miraculous transportation for end-time believers who obey the flee command. Here's an amazing parallel. Exodus 19 verse 4 uses the same imagery when God told Israel, "Yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I carried you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself." God promises the same type of miraculous deliverance for end-time believers. But this supernatural transportation is only available to those who step out in faith when the command comes. God doesn't carry those who refuse to move. The third reason Jesus connects flight to escape is that the timing of the flee command provides perfect protection from the worst persecution. The abomination of desolation occurs exactly at the midpoint of the 7-year tribulation period. Daniel 9 verse 27 describes the timing. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. This means believers who flee when the abomination appears will avoid the entire second half of the tribulation, the period Jesus called the Great Tribulation. Matthew 24 verses 21 to 22 describes this period. For then there will be great distress, unequaled from the beginning of the world until now, and never to be equaled again. If those days had not been cut short, no one would survive, but for the sake of the elect those days will be shortened. By fleeing at the midpoint, believers escape the worst 3.5 years of human history and enter divine protection for the exact same period. The fourth reason Jesus links flight to. The key to understanding this escape is that fleeing isn't some act of cowardly retreat, it's a strategic maneuver in a spiritual war. When believers take refuge in the places God has prepared for them, they're not running away from the fight. They're simply repositioning themselves for ultimate victory. As Ephesians 6 verse 12 so powerfully reminds us, our real battle isn't against people of flesh and blood. No, our struggle is against unseen rulers, against authorities, against the dark powers that dominate this world, and against the spiritual forces of evil that operate in the heavenly realms. Trying to physically resist these spiritual enemies isn't just ineffective, it's strategically short-sighted. But by fleeing to God's designated safe havens, believers come under His direct and unwavering protection. Here, they can engage in effective spiritual warfare through focused prayer and heartfelt intercession. That's the brilliance of this tactic. While the rest of the world futilely fights the Antichrist with human weapons and suffers defeat, believers in the wilderness wage war with spiritual weapons and emerge victorious. Their prayers, rising from a place of safety, become more powerful than any earthly resistance. Scene 13. The urgency behind Jesus' warning. What makes Jesus' command to flee so incredibly urgent is the tight timeline involved. Matthew 24 verses 17 to 18 highlights the need for immediate action, stating, "Let no one on the housetop go down to take anything out of the house. Let no one in the field go back to get their cloak." This strong language suggests that believers will have mere minutes, not hours, to react once the abomination appears. The window of escape will be incredibly short. And here's why this is so critical. In our modern age of instant communication, news of the abomination will spread globally within minutes. Unfortunately, that also means the Antichrist's response, the hunting down of those who refuse to worship him, will begin just as quickly. The believers who manage to survive will be those who are spiritually and mentally prepared to move instantly the moment they see the sign. Those who hesitate, who pause to grab belongings, say goodbyes, or make extensive preparations, will be caught in the Antichrist's persecution net. The urgency of Jesus' warning was tragically validated in 70 AD when Rome destroyed Jerusalem. Early Christian historians tell us that those believers who heeded Jesus' words fled immediately when they saw a Roman army surrounding the city. They all survived. Sadly, many other Jews chose to resist the Romans or simply waited too long to escape. Over 1 million people died in the horrific siege that followed. The contrast couldn't be starker. Those who fled lived. Those who resisted died. And here's the chilling parallel. The future abomination of desolation will unleash persecution that makes the Roman siege look mild in comparison. If immediate flight was absolutely necessary to survive ancient persecution, how much more urgent is it for believers in the end times? Something strange is indeed happening in Jerusalem. Something deeply prophetic. The headlines can't quite capture it, and most of the world remains completely blind to what's taking shape. But for those of us watching with spiritual eyes, the signs are unmistakable. The holy city is preparing not for war and certainly not for peace, but for the glorious return of Jesus Christ. The Mount of Olives awaits his feet. The third temple is rapidly nearing construction. And when it finally rises, prophecy will accelerate dramatically. The timeline of the end times will lock firmly into place. There will be no pause button, no rewinds, just a relentless countdown to eternity. Are you truly ready for what Jerusalem is about to unleash upon the world? What most Christians fail to realize is that the third temple isn't just about Jewish worship. It's the key that unlocks the final, climactic chapter of human history. Hidden within its coming construction are 7 specific reasons why the Antichrist will be irresistibly drawn to its power like a moth to a deadly flame. For nearly 2,000 years, Jerusalem has been missing something absolutely crucial: God's house. The first temple was destroyed by Babylon in 586 BC. The second temple was demolished by Rome in 70 AD. But biblical prophecy clearly demands that a third temple must rise before Jesus returns. Daniel 9 verse 27 describes the pivotal moment when everything changes. He will confirm a covenant with many. In the middle of the 7, he will put an end to sacrifice and offering. And at the temple, he will set up an abomination that causes desolation until the end that is decreed is poured out on him. This prophecy requires a functioning temple where active sacrifices are being performed. No temple means no abomination, and no abomination means no fulfillment of end-time prophecy. But here's the truly mind-blowing fact. The third temple isn't just needed for biblical prophecy to come to pass. It's already being prepared by people who don't even believe in Jesus. They think they're preparing the way for their Messiah, but in reality, they're unwittingly preparing the way for ours. The first reason, the throne of global authority. The first reason the Antichrist so desperately craves the third temple is revealed in 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 4. He will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. The temple isn't simply a building, it's the ultimate throne room. Throughout history, whoever controlled Jerusalem's temple controlled the Jewish people. But the third temple will be different. It will control far more than just Jews. It will become the very seat of global religious authority. And here's why this is so significant. The Antichrist won't just want political power. He'll demand religious worship. And there's only one place on earth where claiming to be God carries maximum impact, the Holy of Holies in Jerusalem's temple. When the Antichrist sits in that sacred space, he'll be making the ultimate blasphemous statement to every religion on earth. It will be his coronation as the false god of the world. The second reason, the abomination strategy. The second reason involves the Antichrist's diabolical master plan for breaking Jewish faith. Daniel 11 verse 31 prophesies his armed forces will rise up to desecrate the temple fortress and will abolish the daily sacrifice. Then they will set up the abomination that causes desolation. This isn't random destruction. It's strategic defilement. The Antichrist knows that the Jewish people have waited 2,000 long years for their temple to be rebuilt. When he desecrates it, he'll crush their deepest hopes and force them to choose between their faith and their very lives. But here's the brilliant evil of his strategy. By initially allowing the temple to be built, he gains the trust of the Jewish people. They'll see him as their protector and benefactor. When he later defiles it, the betrayal will be so devastating that many will abandon their faith completely. The temple becomes bait in the Antichrist's carefully laid trap to capture Jewish souls. The third reason, the sacrifice connection. The third reason the Antichrist targets the temple involves the daily sacrifices. Hebrews 10 verse 4 explains that it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. The Antichrist knows this truth, and he'll use it as a powerful weapon. When the Jewish people rebuild the temple and restart the sacrifices, they'll be rejecting Jesus' perfect sacrifice on the cross. The Antichrist will encourage this rejection because it keeps them spiritually blind. But here's the shocking twist. When the Antichrist stops these sacrifices halfway through the tribulation, he won't be ending meaningless rituals. He'll be forcing the Jewish people to confront the undeniable reality that only Jesus' blood can truly save them. The sacrifice system becomes a spiritual mirror that reflects their desperate need for Christ. The fourth reason, the prophecy fulfillment trap. The fourth reason reveals the Antichrist's audacious attempt to hijack biblical prophecy. He knows that Christians expect the temple to be rebuilt before Jesus returns. So he'll cleverly help build it and then claim credit for fulfilling prophecy. Revelation 13 verses 3 to 4 describes how the world will worship the beast, saying, "Who is like the beast? Who can wage war against it?" Part of this worship will stem from his apparent ability to fulfill biblical predictions. People will think, if he can make the temple happen, maybe he really is the Messiah. The Antichrist will present himself as the answer to every prophetic promise, using the temple as supposed proof of his divine calling. But he's not fulfilling prophecy. He's actually falling directly into God's prophetic trap, a trap that leads inevitably to his own utter destruction. The fifth reason, the Jerusalem control factor. The fifth reason involves controlling Jerusalem itself. Zechariah 12 verse 3 prophesies on that day, when all the nations of the earth are gathered against her, I will make Jerusalem an immovable rock for all the nations. All who try to move it will injure themselves. Jerusalem isn't just another city on the map. It's the prophetic epicenter of the world. Whoever controls Jerusalem wields immense influence over global events. But whoever controls Jerusalem's temple controls Jerusalem's spiritual authority. The Antichrist understands that his new world order requires more than mere political submission. It demands religious conversion. The temple becomes his powerful platform for demanding worship from every nation on earth. When he sits in God's house, he'll be claiming absolute authority over God's chosen city and God's chosen people. The sixth and seventh reasons, the deception and destruction plans. The sixth reason the Antichrist wants the temple is for mass deception. 2 Thessalonians 2 verses 9 to 11 warns, the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve the lie, and all the ways that wickedness deceives those who are perishing. The temple provides the perfect stage for supernatural deception. An ancient sacred space, combined with demonic miracles, will convince millions that the Antichrist really is divine. The seventh reason is pure, unadulterated destruction. But he's not starting a war he can possibly win. He's triggering the battle that ensures his eternal defeat. The first preparation, the Temple Institute. Now, here's what will truly shock you. Preparations for the third temple aren't just future plans or far-off possibilities. They're a current, tangible reality. The first major preparation is the Temple Institute in Jerusalem. Founded in 1987, this organization has meticulously recreated over 60 sacred vessels needed for temple worship. Golden menorahs, silver trumpets, priestly garments, altar implements, everything described in Exodus has been crafted according to precise biblical specifications. These aren't just museum pieces gathering dust. They're fully functional religious tools, eagerly waiting for a temple to house them. The Institute's motto is chillingly direct. The temple will be rebuilt, not might be or could be, but will be. They're not simply hoping for the temple. They're actively preparing for it with absolute certainty. The second and third preparations, the red heifer and priestly training. The second preparation involves the red heifer prophecy from Numbers 19. Without a perfect red heifer, the temple cannot be purified for worship. For decades, this seemed like an impossible obstacle. But then, in 2022, several red heifers were born in Texas and subsequently shipped to Israel. Jewish rabbis have confirmed that these heifers meet all the stringent biblical requirements. They're currently being carefully guarded and prepared for the purification ceremony that will make temple worship possible once again. The third preparation is priestly training. The Temple Institute runs a dedicated school where Jewish men from the tribe of Levi learn their ancient priestly duties. They study sacrifice procedures, temple rituals, and ceremonial requirements in painstaking detail. These aren't just academic exercises. They're practical preparations for men who fully expect to serve in a rebuilt temple within their own lifetimes. The fourth and fifth preparations, architectural plans and construction materials. The fourth preparation is the completion of detailed architectural plans. Using biblical descriptions, archaeological evidence, and advanced computer modeling, architects have created comprehensive blueprints for the third temple. Every measurement, every room, every sacred space has been precisely calculated. These plans don't exist in some distant future. They exist right now, ready for construction to begin at a moment's notice. The fifth preparation is even more astonishing: quarried stones. In underground chambers near Jerusalem, massive limestone blocks have been cut and shaped according to temple specifications. Just like Solomon's original temple, these stones are being prepared off-site so that construction can proceed quickly and quietly. The stones are waiting. The plans are ready. All that's needed is permission. The sixth, seventh, and eighth preparations. The sixth preparation is musical training. Levitical musicians are diligently learning the ancient songs and musical arrangements that were used in temple worship. They're practicing on recreated biblical instruments, preparing to lead worship in a rebuilt temple. The seventh preparation involves incense production. The Temple Institute has painstakingly recreated the secret formula for temple incense as described in Exodus 30. This sacred mixture requires 11 specific spices in exact proportions, and they have it ready and waiting. The eighth preparation is perhaps the most controversial: genetic testing. Some Jewish organizations are using DNA analysis to identify men who can definitively prove descent from Aaron the high priest. These men would be uniquely qualified to serve as temple priests and perform the most sacred ceremonies. Modern science is being harnessed to fulfill ancient religious requirements. The ninth and 10th preparations, political and financial support. The ninth preparation involves growing political support. Several Israeli political parties now include third temple construction in their official platforms. What was once considered a fringe religious fantasy is rapidly becoming mainstream political policy. Government officials, military leaders, and religious authorities are openly discussing when, not if, the temple will be rebuilt. The 10th and final preparation is substantial financial backing. Multiple organizations have raised millions of dollars specifically for temple construction. Wealthy Jewish donors worldwide are generously contributing to temple funds, believing they're investing in the most important religious project in human history. The money is ready. The plans are complete. The materials are prepared. The only thing missing is the right moment. Accelerates. But here's what most people simply don't grasp. The third temple isn't just about Jewish worship. It's the starting gun for the final countdown to Jesus' return. When the temple rises, several prophetic clocks will start ticking simultaneously. The 7-year tribulation period begins. The Antichrist's carefully crafted deception campaign launches. God's judgment timeline activates. Daniel 12 verses 11 to 12 gives us the exact countdown from the time that the daily sacrifice is abolished and the abomination that causes desolation is set up. There will be 1,290 days. Blessed is the one who waits for and reaches the end of the 1,335 days. These aren't symbolic numbers or vague estimates. They're literal days. When the temple is defiled, we'll know exactly how much time remains until Jesus triumphantly returns. The Mount of Olives connection. But the temple is only half the story. Zechariah 14 verse 4 prophesies, "On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in two from east to west, forming a great valley, with half of the mountain moving north and half moving south." Jesus will return to the exact location from which he ascended into heaven. The Mount of Olives directly overlooks the Temple Mount. When he comes back, he'll be looking directly at the temple, whether it's the original building or the Antichrist's defiled version. And here's an incredible detail. Geological surveys have revealed that the Mount of Olives sits on a major fault line. The earthquake described in Zechariah isn't just prophetic poetry or symbolic imagery. It's a geological inevitability, simply waiting for the right trigger to occur. The question that demands an answer. The signs are undeniable. The preparations are complete. The timeline is accelerating rapidly. Jerusalem is preparing for something momentous, something that will fundamentally change everything. The third temple will rise. The Antichrist will claim it as his own, and Jesus will ultimately reclaim it. And every person alive will be forced to choose which king they will serve. The temple represents the ultimate collision between God's kingdom and Satan's kingdom, between truth and deception, between the real Messiah and the false one. When it's built, there will be no pause button, no rewinds, just a relentless countdown to eternity that culminates with Jesus Christ standing victorious on the Mount of Olives, looking down at his reclaimed temple in his restored city. The question isn't whether these events will happen. Biblical prophecy guarantees that they will. The real question is, are you ready for what Jerusalem is about to unleash upon the world? Will you recognize the signs when they appear? Will you choose the right king when the choice becomes crystal clear? Will you be prepared for the dramatic acceleration of prophecy that begins when the third temple rises? Something truly extraordinary is unfolding in Jerusalem. But for those of us watching with spiritual eyes, it's not strange or confusing at all. It's the glorious fulfillment of promises made thousands of years ago. The holy city is preparing. The temple is coming. Jesus is returning. And time is rapidly running out to get ready. What will you do with the precious time you have left?